You can't believe how fast these turkeys are when you shoot this net.
How to relate to most turkey hunters, you know, you're at that moment when you've got a bird gobbling, he's coming in, he's getting in the shotgun range, and your heart's beating out of your chest. I mean, when those birds come in, they're racing to the bait, your heart starts beating out of your chest, just pumping, and you know, your hand's on the trigger waiting, making sure that those heads all go down.
Giving back and leaving a place better than you found it, that is what game keeping is all about. As hunters and fishermen, we're rewarded in our time in nature, shining a light on fascinating aspects of wildlife, and the best management practices will help us all to be better outdoorsmen while giving back to nature and the wildlife that we love so much. Armed with a deeper understanding, we are game keepers.
The Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak is presented by Roxor, Mission Ready, and in association with Tractor Supply Company for life out here.
So with the no jake harvest regulation being implemented in 2011, prior to that period, 25–35% of the harvest annually was comprised of jakes. Since then, we've seen on average less than 4% of the harvest being jakes.
I've been working with the Game and Fish Commission on this turkey project. The initial thought was they were interested in implementing a limited jake harvest.
With some of the research now that we've been conducting over these past several years, we're seeing that jake survival is extremely high, you know, possibly in excess of 80% or so. What that's doing is allowing more of those juvenile birds from their first year make it into their second year and are now available to harvest and hopefully breed.
So they were just interested in looking at making sure that the jakes were surviving and living to be adults.
Because the majority of jakes will not breed. You know, this species uses sexual selection, so those hens are out there actively looking for a mate they want to breed with, and those jakes don't necessarily have the characteristics they're looking for. And just because you end up harvesting a lot of adult males doesn't necessarily mean that those jakes are going to breed. So we want to make sure to have more of those 2-year-old birds around, that hopefully more of them can breed and hopefully increase, you know, nest success and reproductive success down the line.
And so they had some policy changes to try to increase gobbler carryover.
So gobbler carryover, it's a measure where during the brood survey, and that's looking at our reproduction rate, so we try to take a ratio of the number of young of the year turkeys to the number of hens that are observed, and then we also take a gobbler carryover measure, which is just simply a number of gobblers that are observed during the survey period divided by the number of hens that were observed. And so we try to maintain a long-term average of about 0.5 gobblers to hens. You know, that's just to get an idea of how many of those males have survived from the previous spring that would hopefully be available the next year. You know, if you have a low carryover number, you may have fewer toms available to harvest the next spring. You've got a limited resource on the landscape when you've got a lot of folks that like to get after them and go out there and hunt each spring. And
the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission's got a resource to manage, and my role as a researcher is I do practical applied research that helps management units try to address resource questions on landscapes.
You know, you're trying to make sure that you're providing that opportunity for hunters on the landscape to get out there and enjoy the resource, but also trying to make sure that you're managing the resource in an effective way so that it sustains for the long haul.
Turkey populations are in decline, and we're essentially trying to figure out what drivers are causing that decline and what things we can change. We as an Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, what sort of things they have control of that they can actually change to improve populations.
Honestly, most of the folks in the Game and Fish Commission gotten to where they are because they have a joy for the outdoors and really enjoy getting out there for whichever resource that they're managing or helping manage.
The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission is dedicated to managing this resource. They're interested in learning about the dynamics in these populations. So it's really important that hunters understand that we as a research and management unit are concerned and we understand the resource and the situation that we're in and just trying to do the best we can to make changes to populations.
So everything that we do is to hopefully better, their experience in the woods. We want to make sure that they understand that, we're there with their best interests in mind. I mean, I'm a passionate turkey hunter. I love to turkey hunt. A lot of things take time. Research isn't something that you can flip a switch and, in a year, you got all the answers. It's a long-term process, and, it just takes time to get the answers that you're looking for.
Stay connected with Gamekeepers on both Facebook and Instagram.
I'm going home, I'm going home.
So this morning, we'll get in here and get this all set, and hopefully catch them this afternoon. Oh, this is not your average 8 to 5 job. Absolutely not. We're totally on the turkey schedule. We try to time it just right. We look at these cameras and understand what times of day they're coming in here.
Then you're just at the mercy of the turkeys at that point in time and hoping they're going to show up. Maybe 5 times out of 10 they do, the other 5 times they don't.
The field guys are trying to get these turkeys to come within an hour of each other 4 or 5 days in a row.
Hundreds, thousands of man hours throughout the winter season, running those camera sites, keeping them rebaited, and identifying when you've got a consistent pattern on the birds.
I mean, these guys are putting hundreds of man hours in before hunting season to capture these birds, and they're not easy to get on.
You're trying to identify sites where you'll be able to set up a net that's potentially up to 50, 60 feet wide.
This is our rocket net. We'll roll this out. As we're doing it, we're going to make sure there's no stems or anything sticking up through the net. So when we do, it's not going to hold the net back, so it's able to fly right over those turkeys. These are anchor points for this net. So we'll tie the net off to these anchor points. We're going to give it a little bit of slack there. You can't believe how fast these turkeys are when you shoot this net.
How to relate to most turkey hunters, you're at that moment when you've got a bird gobbling, he's coming in, he's getting into shotgun range, your heart's beating out of your chest. I mean, when those birds come in, they're racing to the bait, your heart starts beating out of your chest, just pumping, and your hand's on the trigger waiting, making sure that those heads all go down.
These rockets, we want to make sure they're aimed right. Ideally, we're going to wait till all their heads are down to shoot. We certainly don't want to take a chance of injuring or killing one of these turkeys because we're not going to get the research we want out of it. If I can get this thing aimed where it's going to hit me in the chest out here at a full step, then I know, even if he pops his head up at the last second, hopefully the net's going to go over him and not injure him. This is, I don't know that you call it black powder, more like those Pyrodex pellets. You can see them inside there. And there's your ignition packet. That's what the wires are hooked to. When it goes boom, they all go boom. Sends a rocket flying over the turkeys. Everything is to ideally keep those turkeys here as long as we can, because it's not like a hunt, When that turkey pops out in the opening and you've got the shot, you take it. Usually we're looking at multiple turkeys on these sites. So you have to wait for 4, 5, 6 heads to get down, and you have to make sure they're not between that space there, between the bait pile and the net. I know I keep harping on it, but we spent so much time and effort trying to catch these things. We sure don't want to kill or injure one. Hook our rocket wires into this blaster. Make sure they're connected very well. Now we're hot. We've had 3 to 5. The 3 are pretty regular. If we can get 3 in here this afternoon, we'll be happy.
This is obviously a very stressful situation for the birds. You've shot a net off over them. You're trying to get them calmed down as quickly as possible. So the first thing we do is we get them out of the nets. We put them into boxes that are designed specifically to hold turkeys.
The idea of the no jake was to make sure that we're recruiting those jakes instead of harvesting them at 9 months old, that we're harvesting them as 2-year-old birds. And so our survival rates of those jakes are really high.
We'll get the bands on them. We'll take some quick measurements on the adult males, for beard and spur length.
These are reward bands here. There's a phone number on there for the Game and Fish Commission, so if this bird is harvested, they can call that number. This is the alphanumeric band. This is used for our grid system cameras so they can be identified easier from photos later on.
I mean, we've effectively pushed those jakes to be 2-year-old birds so they're available to be hunted, right, as a 2-year-old bird. The idea is that we've increased the number of 2-year-old gobblers on the landscape because we're not shooting them as jakes.
Try to continue working towards the end goal, which is hopefully trying to understand exactly what's going on with our harvest rates and whether or not we need to make some changes there.
The idea is that we put more gobblers on the landscape and more birds to hunt, but we also need to understand that populations are in decline so that hopefully these 2-year-old birds are at least able to breed before they're harvested. Otherwise, our population decline is going to continue.
The Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak is brought to you by Mossy Oak Brand Camo, Mossy Oak Native Nurseries, Mossy Oak Properties, Mossy Oak Biologic, Furminator, B&W Trailer Hitches, Spartan Cameras, Browning Firearms, Loophole, Apex Ammunition, the Gamekeepers Magazine, and Gamekeepers Fieldwear. Hey, to take your gamekeeping to the next level with up-to-date news and tips, scan the QR code on the screen. There's not a network across the country more qualified and trusted in helping folks buy or sell land than Mossy Oak Properties. To find your favorite place, talk to the land specialist at Mossy Oak Properties or visit mossyoakproperties.com.
There's several things you can plant for your turkeys because like any other critter, they don't just want one thing. What I really want to give them is kind of a checkerboard. I want to give them several options.
So a lot of things come down to food. I like having a bunch of clover. I think it's great for all wildlife, especially for the turkeys.
It's hard to beat clover. It houses so many insects that turkeys like to eat.
Clover is a major, major attractor to turkeys. They love to bug in it.
Having that food source and having that biologic, non-typical, or Clover Plus, I think is a really good option.
And so we also have Chufa.
I think you should reserve a couple of spots for Chufa. It's an amazing product.
It's not a pretty crop. There's nothing real flashy about it, but under the ground, it grows this massive wad of tubers that resemble peanuts. It's absolutely the most addictive thing for turkeys that you can plant. And it doesn't take a lot of it. So ideally, if I'm wanting to plant a field just for my turkeys, I'm gonna have a strip of clover, I'm gonna have a strip of whistleback or seed producing varieties like millet, sorghums, and sunflowers, and then I'm also gonna have an area just for Chufa. And that's really gonna give me almost 12 months worth of food in one spot dedicated just for my turkeys. When you look at the statistics of turkey nesting, poult survival, it really makes you realize just how important trapping small nest predators can be.
I think predator control is a really big deal. I mean, it's definitely something that you got to stay on all year round. It's 365 days a year. I had a place that we did a lot of predator control on it. Lo and behold, our next season, I mean, there was an unbelievable poult population, a lot more gobbling turkeys. I mean, it made a huge difference.
You know, a lot of things you do take some time to kind of take place and start to unfold and help you out, but when you really get after nest predators and really trap them hard, obviously within the legal limits of your state, you can see an almost immediate response in the amount of poults on that particular piece of property. Prescribed burning is, without a doubt, probably the most underutilized tool for improving turkey habitat.
As far as habitat goes, first and foremost, I gotta mention prescribed fire.
The biggest thing about implementing fire to a property is you just want to make sure that you cover all your bases. You want to make sure you have your roads prepared well in advance. You want to make sure the humidity and the wind and everything is good to go, and then check with your local services on making sure you get that burn permit.
Seeing how quickly turkeys respond to a prescribed burn is really just a big reinforcement into how much they like it.
The biggest thing with fire for me is I remember some public land around the area. They would have some big blocks of woods that they'd be burning. And I mean, there'd still be smoke coming off the trees, and the turkeys were already back in there.
I mean, there's still pine cones smoking in here, and there's turkeys walking through here, picking up seeds, picking up bugs, getting feed that was not accessible beforehand.
Turkeys like continuity. They don't like to run into areas they don't want to travel through and have to go around. So having open woods but nearby thickets, just think about that continuity and having big wide open roads, kind of like you're managing for quail. You've got to have dirt and dusting.
Fire is definitely a big tool with habitat. For having nesting areas, gridding off different sections to burn each year, I think is definitely a good way to do it.
Those first seedlings that come up and all those bugs and all the small seeds that were not available beforehand are all of a sudden there. And turkeys absolutely love a fresh prescribed burn in almost any habitat type.
Ultimately, they like it to be a little bit more open than what you would want to do for your deer. So you kind of have to be creative and manage for both, and I think you can.
Closed captioning for gamekeepers is provided by Gunner Kennels. Man's best friend deserves man's best kennel. We invite you to subscribe to the Gamekeepers magazine or pick up a copy at Bass Pro Shops, Tractor Supply, and Walmart. Hey, to take your gamekeeping to the next level with up-to-date news and tips, scan the QR code on the screen. And don't forget to download our all-new Gamekeeper podcasts.
Well, I really didn't start turkey hunting until I started working at Mossy Oak. But man, as soon as I got down here, heard about, how fun turkey hunting was, I had to try it. So I was in college over at Mississippi State. There's a lot of public land access around, so got to spend some time in between classes, if you will. I actually learned everything, in the woods right there in those public spots. It's a real special place, for me, not only turkey hunting, but again, there's something about those public turkeys that just, it's just really great. Hayden, he spent a lot of time in the woods and on the water with me. We live in a pretty cool little spot, and I've got access to public water and public land right there from the house. So, he's been in stride with me the whole time. Since he's been old enough, I probably had him out on the boat the first time when he was 2, I imagine. He was catching flathead before school when he was in pre-K, and so he's always, been my outdoor little buddy. There's no question about it. At the end of this winter, all of a sudden, he said, "Hey man, I want to go turkey hunting this spring." He hadn't been turkey hunting. He got excited about it. It was youth season starting March 8th, and we talk turkey a lot around the office, needless to say, and there's a couple other guys, I won't name any names, Riley, that likes to, public turkey hunting too. So we were just kind of talking amongst each other, and he knew about a spot really close to where I started turkey hunting. When you go in the woods and you don't think things are gonna work out, and they just do sometimes. And that's kind of what happened this morning.
You got him. I can't believe it. How many did you see?
I couldn't count them.
We're actually hunting on public land. We're getting youth season in Mississippi, so got some good recon from my buddy Riley Payne about where some turkeys were. And we came in here, of course, you know, where we thought the turkeys were, they weren't. But we didn't get discouraged. We decided to loop around and just ease down this road enough. Well, we saw them before they saw us, so we backed up, popped a little blind up, threw the decoy out, and, you know, yelped a few times, and here they came. It's really special to me because I killed my first turkey on public land, and I wanted, you know, Hayden to have the same kind of experience. Didn't expect in 100 years it would work out this morning. You know, as soon as he shot, I still can't believe it. I see everybody telling the story at the end, I'm like, I can't believe it, but, you know, it all was a blur at that point, honestly, and, you know, you just gotta throw your hands up and, you know, just give thanks and rejoice is the best way to put it for having that experience and it all ending well. I've always tried to be real careful not to force the outdoors on my kids, but, you know, to see Hayden's passion, you know, during that hunt and now after the hunt, you know, it's all he's talking about is, you know, turkeys, 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 turkeys. It really, you know, it's really cool for me as a father and as a turkey hunter. What I'm able to do for a living and allowed to do, you know, day in and day out is a blessing, would be an understatement to me. And, you know, to be able to experience that with my kids and my family. I mean, my wife, you know, she loves turkey hunting as much as I do. Our whole family, you know, do that. It's a real blessing, you know, and it's at the core of, you know, what Mossy Oak is and what Mossy Oak stands for. And the whole time, you know, not get trouble at work either because they understand exactly what you're doing.